From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to SBI TV, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today we're going to discuss talent management, and in specific, the connection between the experience of the employee and the experience of the customer. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. I'm also your host. Joining me today in the studio in person is Curt Redden, and Curt is the Global Director of Talent Development for UPS Capital. So Curt, great to see you. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the studio. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about you and a little bit about UPS Capital for those who don't know?
Yeah, sounds great. First of all, Matt, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here. UPS Capital actually is a wholly owned subsidiary of UPS. We have over 100 years of experience in both supply chain help, consulting, especially around financial services and insurance services.
Okay, very good. And then how about you've had a really interesting role, and you and I got to know each other years ago. But talk a little bit about your role, because I think it's really important in the current role you're in to give some context about what you've done.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, my background has obviously been all sales, sales leadership, and then bouncing between training and talent development, both on the middle market side and enterprise for UPS. Had some real exciting, interesting opportunities to actually roll out talent strategies for UPS in Asia, specifically China, Hong Kong, and some other markets there, and then brought those back over to Capital. We did a lot of work initially in the sales side, and we expanded that to really extend our talent development strategies across the enterprise.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you here. So, Curt, I'm always keen, and I was trying to remember the first time, how did we meet? What was your first interaction to SBI or exposure?
I believe we had a couple of engagements that I was really looking for some partners to really help us on identifying A-player talent. And that was one of the first projects that we had, because we were really struggling to make certain that we got the right people in the right role, right people in the right seats to really go out and be able to crush it. I know that was a project, and then...
And did you find us via the blog, or I'm trying to remember how you and I met way back when?
Well, let's make it personal, Matt. Was it at a bar or a restaurant?
It could have been at a bar. If you served vodka, it definitely would have been a bar.
I believe it may have been through your blog, and I've been doing research through multiple different vendors. I think a couple things you guys had caught our eye, and we brought in, had some initial discussions that went on from there, and then it actually transitioned. We did some work with sales leadership as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very good. Well, it's great to have you here, and happy to hear that things are going well. So.
Great.
If you're watching or listening out there and you don't want to miss any of the new shows that we produce, because we do a couple of these a week, if you're an iPhone user, just download the SBI app to have access to notifications brought to your commute, your travel, or your workout routine. Nothing better than doing CrossFit with guys like Curt and I in your ear. So search for Sales Benchmark Index in the App Store and download the app to your iPhone. All right, let's jump into the questions. So in this first segment, we're going to talk about this emerging concept of the employee experience, what it is, and how it differs from talent management approaches of the past, and how it extends past the four walls of the enterprise. So, Curt, knowing that you grew up in sales, then you did sales training, now you're in global talent development, like you might be one of the most qualified people to speak about the employee experience relative to the sales force and what that means. So maybe ground the audience in what that means at UPS Capital.
Well, again, I think some background would be helpful if I could. When I first took on some of the challenges we had, I almost brand myself as a talent development training heat-seeking missile. You know, is how do we get in and solve the problem? What is the problem? So in the case of what I'm sure a lot of your audience is really caring about is, how do we get the people in the right seats? How do we accelerate their growth, their onboarding, get them more productive faster, and really address where are the gaps between where we are and what we want to be? That was the initial phases, and we got a lot of great lift from that. What I've seen as my role has evolved is a huge challenge with what I sincerely believe to be a coming war for talent, for top talent, for A-player talent. And how are we going to become an employer of choice that allows us to get the right people on board initially, but then to maintain them over time and give them so much more opportunity in terms of, it's not just about skill set training improvement, it's not just about are they happy with their comp? It's about truly, what is my employee experience here for what I get out of working for you? It is truly a different concept, I believe, an employee value proposition I think best in class is going to have to be focused on.
Okay. So I guess if you think about traditional talent management in an enterprise company like UPS Capital, where do you locate employee experience? Like, there isn't really like a central owner, is there?
I think about it differently, man. I hope you don't mind me saying that, because again, yes, most people are going to knee-jerk and say, if you're going down this path, where are the logical places? HR, talent development, you've got some other places where I would want to house it there. I think about it differently, because most people are there with the fact that we get customer experience. We have to drive incredible levels of exceeding expectations with our clients and our customers to get there. So we get CX, we get that we need profitable revenue growth and all those other kind of things. I believe foundational to those things is it starts with the employee experience. Yeah. And I think that starts with the C-level and top down. Yeah. And it's that lead by example and actually saying, people watch what we do. They don't watch what we say. Yeah. And it's that commitment, and those are the kind of things that I've been extremely fortunate and I'll even use the phrase blessed to have some great partners in the leadership ranks at Capital that get this, see it, have gotten behind it, and that's where we've been able to get the lift.
Has sales been the lead dog of this at UPS Capital, or how have you worked with the other functions to come along? Because as you and I both know, you can't walk into any organization and be a great salesperson and create a great sales environment without HR, without finance, right? Without operations and or support. You need everybody. So how's that working?
Well, it almost sounds like you set me up for a plug, so now I have to give it. I'm very fortunate to have an extraordinary VP of Global Sales that I work with. Yeah. I would say his name, but I'm still waiting on a cash payment.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
But he's on board. Ideally, what's happened is most organizations and outside of Capital get the fact that where the brand meets the customer is where they get really, really intense on their employee experience initiatives initially. What we're finding and seeing is that we have to go upstream and get everybody on board with that. So yes, I have some early adopters in those places like sales and field marketing and the other places, but we have to go upstream and really engage the people that don't necessarily have those normal touch points.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Curt and I, as we think about moving from this first segment talking about the concept of employee experience, what it means, and if you think about creating that first, the big takeaway from segment one from Curt is, hey, it starts with the employees. It actually starts before the customers. On the second segment, we're going to talk about the connection between EX and CX and what that means. So, Curt, if you think about measurements and KPIs of testing your employee experience, like, am I doing well, am I not doing well? Do you have any that you would share with the group that you guys are using right now?
I do, if I can talk on a high level, because what we found is you've really got two things you have to focus on to really move the needle. Okay. One is the employee level, and one is the leadership level, and then finally I said two, but the most important being the customer. Okay. So we use two metrics. One, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are listening to, we have an employee engagement survey. Yep. The challenge we've had with that, and we still use that, and there's still value in it, is that it measures all the other things that we necessarily can't drive as individual leaders. Benefit plans, other things outside of it. So we have a quick pulse experience survey that is 10 questions. And, again, you may have different angles on this from your listeners.
But you're doing it, and it's regular. And
we have some source data from Gallup, some other things, and what we found is if we get this right, it moves the needle. So that's the individual. We then have on our leadership side what we call a manager or leader feedback tool that we do biannual, and that is a 360 that then validates, is that leader or boss, which again we believe and we see again and again, who has the biggest impact on your level of engagement or experience of the company. I see it again and again. You can work for an awesome company, but if your boss is Attila the Hun, Attila the Hun is probably not a good example. If your boss is not there, your level of experience can be cancerous. So that's one of the things that we really focus on is developing leaders at all levels, and that's part of the tool that we use.
So I love the intent around all the employees via the engagement survey, but also the leadership piece. I think a lot of companies stop short there. They'll do performance reviews, but in terms of like some holistic way and the ability to have leaders accept feedback, right? Because one of my peers, actually, our head of employee experience, we actually use that terminology, Eric Bauer, he always talks about feedback is data. And so how a leader reviews the feedback, so when you say, hey, I didn't agree with how you did that. I noticed that such and such happened, and it might come across as negative. He's teaching our entire firm that, guys, it's just data. Don't overreact and try not to take it personally. It's just data, as if you were looking at customer data and churn was going the wrong way. Yeah, it creates some level of emotion, but now armed with that, what do you want to do? And do you want to accept the data and then try to get better?
Well, it's the carrot versus the stick. Is this truly going to be a tool to help leaders at all levels get better, or is it going to be a hammer? And, we holistically have looked at this as it has to be the carrot. They have to want that. And again, I'll go back to some of my senior staff. They review these results with their teams.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's a great level of transparency. Okay, so now we're sort of working our way down through the other departments. If sales is going first, so to say, relative to customer experience and the connection with the employee experience, have you noticed that sales is adopting maybe a little bit of a different philosophy in terms of how they're dealing with the customer because you're doing the engagement surveys, you're doing the 360? Like, is the yield starting to impact and translate itself into the customer experience?
What we are seeing is, in full disclosure and transparency, I have some outliers, other business issues, other reasons going, but what we are seeing literally, and I know you have a lot of data people who are listening to this right now to say, show me the data. When I had some of my analysis done on this, is literally almost a direct correlation between moving the needle in these metrics and seeing the engagement and experience level metrics rise, CX level metrics rise through NPS, Net Promoter Score on our backside, which we measure and capture, and ultimately productivity levels. I can literally cover up my performance reports, and I can go back and actually look and see movement over a quarter with how that movement's going and know where that's happening. So again, that's exciting to me, and I think that's the whole return on investment of the organization that people can lose sight of, especially people being held accountable to move the needle every month. This can seem like soft. It can seem like soft emphasis and soft approach, but it is massively impactful from the business results it can drive.
So that's my last question on this segment is, if you think about employee compensation, one of the things as a firm that we did years ago was we pay, depending on your level, 30 to 50% of your variable income is based on client sat. So when we do an engagement. So that took kind of the friction out of consulting of billable hours and utilization, which wasn't good. And it said, hey, if I deliver work for you and you're not happy and our team follows up and that team gets a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10, it's got financial impact. So it's created much more interlock. How have you guys thought about implementing or executing all the way down to the compensation level, where the experience not only for the employee now gets tied to how the customers view it, and you're paying people based on delivering on that value prop? Have you gone to that extent?
Great question. There's so many things that we've done that we've seen great lift from. And you even look at examples outside of this. Think about when you go into a fast food restaurant and they've got to ring the bell if you like that. As cheesy as that can be, that's good stuff. I was just reading an article on the plane talking about Mary Barra from GM, and she literally went in and I believe the dress code for GM was volumes, and she changed it to one phrase that said, please dress appropriately. I know that sounds insignificant, but it's not. I mean, those are things that, what does that signal to your employees? It signals trust. Yeah. It signals, I hired you, so I trust you to come in and do the right things. Yeah. But example after example of things that we can say where we have the opportunity to reduce processes or bureaucracy that may not be adding value, that actually can translate into employee experience. I mean, one more quick example that we implemented in some meetings that it took off, and I never would have expected this. Simply keep it or kill it. And we're in meetings, and this was employee suggested that came out of our engagement committees. Yeah. which we have a UPS Capital Standing Engagement and Employee Experience Committee, and it was, you can't leave the meeting until we find an outdated process and or thing that we're doing that you can kill. Everybody agrees to kill it on the spot. And again, what is the cost in that?
Love it.
Yeah, so good stuff.
So then, as we sort of transition this last segment about execution, is how do you obviously have gotten buy-in from the managers. How'd you do that?
Top down. I'm very fortunate from the president to the senior staff. They get it. And when we look at our strategy, they have to rally behind it first, because if anybody listening, if you think this is going to be something that's going to come out of HR, or it's going to be something that's going to come out of talent development without that buy-in, it's the same. People look at what you do, not what you say. Yeah. And you can drive that all day long. You're never going to get that horse to run. And
yeah. No, it's a good point. Well, and then so if you think about that, yet I know there's still the desire in so many sales organizations to make sure that people understand the expectations relative to quota. People understand the expectation that, you've got to keep improving, and the ABC player mentality, and constantly improve. So how have you balanced great employee experience with, hey, performance management? And sometimes it doesn't work out for some people, and we have turnover.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think what drives performance is coaching and mentorship, strength-based coaching about near-term future work. You look at your teams, you look at your sports teams that are effective. Think of the best coaches. They get in and they're working with people. It's not, let's sit down and review your last quarters, and this is where I need to give you a bunch of crappy feedback about all the things that you did poorly. It's about how I help you get better consistently. And I'm seeing consistently in my lens the best, and I'll stay with sales leadership because I know this is all, the best sales coaches focus there. Doesn't mean we still don't have the hard performance conversations, but it's about their skill set and their improvement that makes all the difference in the world. By
the way, I love that term. Yeah. Strengths-based coaching about near-term objectives.
Absolutely. Man, you look at, like right now.
No, love it.
So I'm going to give you, can I give you a different example? Please. Because I think sometimes we get caught up in this world of we want to talk extensively about, well, here's the business issue. I think I learn more in my observations when I take unsolicited phone calls for sales, on how should phone selling really work. I think I learn more when I'm really observant. So I have this hole-in-the-wall bar in Atlanta. Corporate offices for UPS are in Atlanta, so I'm up there all the time. And the reason I go there is not because the food is awesome. I'm going to date myself. Anybody remember the show Cheers? Mm-hmm. When you walk in and Norm walked in, what did everybody say? Norm. I walk in and it's Curt, Curt. And the thing about it is, it's not just the bartender and the people behind. Literally, I was having a Hong Kong steak salad. Loved it. I'm going to get there, Matt. I can see you're getting irritated with me.
I'm with you.
And it was really great. I said, hey, this is really great. He yells back to the kitchen. The kitchen dude comes out. He said, man, you really like my salad? He said, that's awesome. Any suggestions for me on how I can make it better? I gave him one, and he changed it and made it and brought me out another one to try for his next time. And I was sitting there watching this in amazement because this same guy, and stay with me, was working another gig at a new steak place that opened up. He told me about it. I said, I'm going to come in and check it out. Love the bartender. He'd always been awesome, energetic. It was incredible. So I take work colleagues to this new steak place in Atlanta, had him wait on us, asked for his section. It was a different person. The guy's head was down. He was miserable. I was trying to make small chat, which I know this will shock you about me. I can be chatty. And I told my colleagues, I go, I don't know what's up with this guy. And I asked him when we got back to the bar, when he was back there, where he was happy. And I go, what is the difference? He goes, oh, well, he said, they just treat me differently there. I go, well, tell me about that. Like, what do you mean? He said, they're all about wanting to look for what I'm doing wrong. He said they constantly, it's new ownership, and they're really particular about how they want anything done. So any of my table, they hover like a hawk, and they give me feedback, and I feel like I'm always on guard for what goes wrong. I said, well, why is it different here? He says, because the owner in the kitchen, everybody's like, where do you need my help? What can we do better? How can we improve? And they coach and they develop. When it gets that simple, it's not a whole lot more complicated than that. Because you look at great leaders and great coaches, their agenda's different. It's about helping those teams get better, and I think that's a big thing. So
totally agree. Love it. All right, man. Well, hey, big contribution. So appreciate this and appreciate you coming by. Great to see you.
Hey, great to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Doing good work. So want to thank Curt for coming by and sharing what I would consider to be forward thinking and bleeding edge relative to the employee experience and in the context of running a high performance, revenue generating organization. So I want to thank the SBI audience for tuning in. You have a choice where you put your eyes in your ears, and the fact that you'd spend some time with us means a great deal to me. So that's it for today. As always, till next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.